Welcome and thank you all for participating in the 2025 UPRT Safety Summit. My name is Rich Stowell. This presentation focuses on upset prevention and recovery training for individual operators in general aviation. This includes recreational aviation as well. How many of you have lost a friend in a general aviation airplane accident? How many have witnessed a fatal loss of control accident or been tasked with trying to figure out how one of these accidents might have happened? How many of you are frustrated by the current state of flight training? If you've been in aviation long enough, I'm sure you know more than a couple of pilots who have died because they lost control of their airplane. That is heartbreaking. And avoidable deficiencies in how those pilots were trained were probably a contributing factor. That is unacceptable. It's why I'm here today representing a global team of outstanding aviation educators dedicated to reducing loss of control. Let's look at what general aviation is and what we face as training providers in that sector. By definition, general aviation is a broad and deep category. General aviation is not specialized like the airlines or the military. And what might work in the airlines or the military won't necessarily work for us in general aviation. Let's look at who general aviation pilots are, what kinds of airplanes are available to us, where we fly, and what pressing loss of control issues we face. On the order of 1 million pilots have access to general aviation. Active pilots range in age from 14 to 100 years old. And we're bound only by bare minimum recurrency requirements. We can fly low and slow in simple Piper Cubs, or airplanes we build in our garages, or high and fast in state-of-the-art airplanes like the epic E1000AX. We can fly anywhere from the surface up to flight level 340. We can be on land, on the water, and in demanding environments like the backcountry. We can operate VFR and IFR, and in special activities like aerobatics. For us, fatal loss of control typically ends as a stall, a spin, or a spiral dive. We also face a disturbing paradox. Take the United States, for example. The expressed purpose of flight training is the acquisition and honing of airmanship skills. In addition, evaluators are supposed to be assessing mastery. On one hand, the FAA and the flight training industry advocate competency-based training with authentic assessments. Yet they advertise hours-based training aimed at passing a check ride. Those two things are incompatible. Not only that, but the national average to become a private pilot is nearly double the advertised hours. Even worse is that general aviation accepts poor quality instruction like it's business as usual. Training programs that only teach to the test. Apathetic time builders, many of whom lack the desire, incentive, or real-world experience to teach. General aviation has a 70 to 80% dropout rate among student pilots and a high initial check ride failure rate. And that's after a typical student has spent twice the number of hours our industry advertises. Airmanship, mastery. The pursuit of excellence in flight training starts with our flight instructors. But we haven't demanded excellence for a long time. Take the SPIN endorsement in the US, for example. The endorsement given to flight instructor applicants usually amounts to little more than a participation trophy. Despite what the endorsement claims, the average instructor lacks competency and does not possess anything approaching instructional knowledge or proficiency regarding stalls or spins. This cavalier attitude toward the spin endorsement is astonishing, especially given the role that stalls, spins, and spirals play in fatal loss of control accidents. The results of all this shouldn't surprise anyone. We tally more fatal loss of control accidents than in the next 5 fatal accident categories combined. Fatal loss of control outpaces controlled flight into terrain by a factor of about 3. And most of the time, pilot error is cited as a cause or factor. The costs are significant as well. I asked earlier if you knew pilots who had died in general aviation airplane accidents. They were our friends and members of our aviation community. The financial costs of general aviation accidents range from $1.6 to $4.6 billion every year. The negative effects of these accidents include a poor image of general aviation, a drain on local emergency services, and in some cases, the closing of small airports. Loss of control has played a significant role in general aviation accidents for at least 80 years. That something meaningful hasn't been done to address this is a classic case of normalization of deviance. Institutional inertia is one reason basic flight training has not evolved. Entrenched stakeholders and training methods are hard to change. Fixed mindsets either cannot or are unwilling to deviate from the status quo. But providers of UPRT not only believe that pilots can be trained to higher standards of knowledge and experience, we see it in practice every day. On one side, we have typical flight training, which is misfocused on ticking boxes and teaching to the test. We also have training providers who are offering aerobatic training disguised as UPRT. Providers who are taking advantage of the UPRT buzzword without embracing or understanding UPRT concepts and outcomes. On the other side, we have providers of genuine upset prevention and recovery training, many of whom are attending this summit. In its Manual on Airplane Upset Prevention and Recovery Training, the International Civil Aviation Organization defines bridge training as additional training designed to address shortfalls in knowledge and skill so that trainees possess the prerequisite levels to even start UPRT. As providers of UPRT know all too well, this bridge training isn't merely filling a gap. It's often spanning a chasm. Providers of UPRT spend a lot of time with trainees just reviewing fundamental flying skills. When it comes to reducing the frequency of in-flight loss of control, the current flight training model isn't working. It will take time and persistence to solve the bigger issues facing our industry. Even so, we can accomplish important work over the next year. Right now, we can control what we do as providers of general aviation UPRT. We should focus first on getting our collective UPRT house in order. We need to continue to improve on and promote the benefits of legitimate UPRT. We also need to do a better job of decoupling UPRT from aerobatic training. We propose that UPRT programs for general aviation be informed by 3 key frameworks. 1. Training that is derived from and connected to first principles. 2. Instructional methods that are guided by learning sciences. The ICAO manual provides a general learning framework that consists of academics, simulation, and hands-on experience in an airplane. 3. Clearly defined standards and best practices for the delivery of UPRT. We also propose the creation of regional UPRT networks modeled after the recently formed one in the U.S. This network was established by 10 founding members. To date, the network has accredited 5 providers of UPRT. Work in progress includes developing standards for UPRT instructors and increasing the network's visibility. Our measurables include comparing the growth of the U.S. network between today and a year from now, creating counterpart networks in other regions, and publishing a set of defined standards of operation for UPRT in general aviation. I know a lot of us felt for a long time as if we were lone voices in the wilderness, but we aren't alone any longer. We're finally coming together through organizations like the UPRT Network and UPRTA International. Consider my colleagues on Team GA UPRT as well. Jeremy Miller, David Pilkington, and Paul Strike in Australia, Christoph Booz in Germany, Mark Greenfield in the UK, Jeff Granger, Mike Clock, and Pete Redden in the US, and Shane Tobin, also in Australia, the Vice President of General Aviation UPRT. We're finding that we have more supporters out there than we think. Success over the next year and beyond depends on how well we work together. Thank you.